Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 29th of August 2024 and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Of course, it has been termed since a long time as a lifeline for Pakistan's economy. We have been talking about it since a very long time in the statements, the visits to China. But despite that, we see incidents that happen, unfortunate incidents that happen, that kind of hamper the whole resolve somehow, somewhere. Now, what is very important that has been highlighted by everybody, whether in China or in Pakistan, is the need for a political consensus. And this is what has happened. A recent moot of all the political parties happened yesterday at the China-Pakistan Institute, and of course to highlight the importance of having a joint political consensus when it comes to China-Pakistan economic corridor. We'll be highlighting the importance of that and also the importance of China-Pakistan economic corridor under the current circumstances and the gamut of Pak-China relationships in our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Gaza situation, of course the Israel-Palestine war that has started since the 7th of October last year and continues to this day. We are on day 328, where at least 18 people, ladies and gentlemen, have been killed since Israel escalated its assault on the occupied West Bank yesterday. Another 22 people have been wounded, 20 have been arrested. The US has issued new sanctions against the Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank in response to this rise in violence against the Palestinians. United Nations Antonio Guterres also calls on Israel to immediately end its operation in the occupied West Bank. This and more will be part of our second segment. Then we are going to talk about Sweden, ladies and gentlemen, that has charged 2 men over the 2023 Quran burnings. We all remember when that happened, and we all remember the furor, the reaction that also came from the Muslim world, including from Pakistan. And now under this pressure, we are seeing the results of that in the form of those perpetrators who had been behind the burning of the Holy Quran, who are going to be charged. Then we are going to talk about the Greek port that is grappling with a flood of dead fish. What is happening is that because of different conditionalities, the fish are being pushed from the rivers into the sea, and as the fish cannot survive in a marine environment, that is why they are being killed, and this is creating a problem also for the economy of Greece. This is going to be our love story. Let's begin, ladies and gentlemen, with our first, and that concerns the China-Pakistan economic corridor, the flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative, and of course a huge project both for Pakistan and for China, for Pakistan for various reasons, the top of that being economy. The important thing in all of this is that everybody, all the stakeholders, need to be on one page when it comes to progress on the CPEC, when it comes to the CPEC itself. A very important moot happened yesterday at the PakistanChina Institute, where there were leaders from all the political parties, whether it be the government, whether it be the opposition, whether it be the other parties as well. They all came together and said only good words and words that resonated as far as a political consensus and a joint consensus is concerned. To talk about that more, CPEC, Pakistan-China relations, the impact of CPEC and what is happening across the world. We've been joined by a very special guest. He is none other than Senator Mushahid Hussain. He is the chairman of Pakistan-China Institute, and he's right here with us, ladies and gentlemen, in the studio. Senator Sahab, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir, and thank you so very much, because I think it was very important that we hear it from you, in fact, from your perspective, because it was your institute under whose ambit all of these politicians got together. Now, first of all, I'd just like to understand, was it a difficult task to get the politicians from the different spheres, whether it be the government or the opposition, and of course have a joint consensus when it came to Pak-China relations and the China-Pakistan economic corridor?
Thank you so much. And I think CPEC is the future. CPEC is the lifeline, as you rightly put it. And yes, there are some difficulties because we live in a very polarized, divisive environment, sadly, on various issues. But fortunately, I think that political parties and politicians can be mature enough to rise above political divisions and political party affiliations when it comes to common causes. And these include whether it's Kashmir, whether it's Palestine, the nuclear program, and thankfully, the China-Pakistan economic corridor. So, and since I've been in myself a parliamentarian in politics, and I've had good relations across the political spectrum, both inside the government and outside the government, I told them that this is about the future of Pakistan. This is not about any government or party or person. This is about Pakistan, its people, and its time-tested relationship, the most pivotal relationship in our foreign policy, China. So I was very happy and pleased that people responded positively. And the statements that came at this rather historic gathering, if I may use the term, because, you know, you had that photograph shows it all, that the political spectrum representing the political parties, representing the government, representing the opposition, and all the provinces of Pakistan, they were there. I don't want to use the word same page, but basically on the same perspective on China-Pakistan economic, and they gave suggestions how to take it forward. And the context was very important, because a few days ago there had been this very unfortunate act of terrorism.
Acts of terrorism.
Acts of terrorism. And one of the subtexts of that was also to sabotage development and stability in Balochistan, where the Gaza port is located. So I think this was also our response to the terrorists and those who are trying to undermine that kind of relationship with China, that look here, whatever the obstacles, whatever the difficulties, the people of Pakistan are steadfast in the commitment to preserve, protect and promote CPEC and the time-tested Pakistan-China relationship.
I couldn't agree more. You also, you know, in this mood, highlighted China's success story in a short time, and you had different elements behind it. You talked about the quality of leadership, the ability to do course correction, the continuity of policy, a very, very important point, learning from others, and peaceful foreign policy. How critical are these points also for countries such as Pakistan?
You see, I made the keynote address at the beginning to set the stage, so to speak. And since I have had a long-standing relationship with China, I first went to China when I was a teenager. I was a student of second year in FC College Lahore, and I was 17 years old when I first went there. So I've seen China in the different phases. When I say the three phases of China: revolution under Chairman Mao, reform under Deng Xiaoping, and the rise under Xi Jinping. And people say, what is the ingredients of this success story? What is the, and I mentioned also, I said before the reform, China had a per capita income of $157, and now it's $12,000. China's economy GDP was $150 billion. Today it is $18 trillion, second only to the United States. And the Fortune 500 has listed China as the country with the largest number of companies in Fortune 500.
All right.
142. The US has 136. So it's an amazing. So I think the lessons for Pakistan are very important. I mentioned quality of leadership, the ability to do a course correction when you know you are on the wrong track, make the course, continuity of policies. People come and go, governments change, but the policy should not change. And learning from others. They learned from us, by the way. They sent people 30, 40 years ago. They wanted to learn from us, and they learned from us. And they speak very highly of Pakistan's skills, of bureaucracy, and what they learned from Pakistan in the past. And of course, a peaceful foreign policy, that you are at ease with yourself and your neighborhood. And so these are, I think, important ingredients. And China being our best friend, a time-tested ally, I think, and a success story, so to speak, we should learn from that.
All right, I think that's a very good point indeed. But during the course of this mood, there were different, politicians who talked about Pak-China relations and what needs to be done. I'd like to begin with what Rehman said. She said China had played a crucial role in the development of the global south. And of course, CPEC had created numerous investment opportunities in Pakistan. We know that. And she also praised Beijing's global security initiative. She called it a commendable effort that will ensure global peace, and also China's role in clean energy development under CPEC. I'd like to understand, what is the Beijing Global Security Initiative? How can it usher in peace, and can Pakistan benefit from it, as well as from the clean energy development under CPEC for sustainable development in Pakistan and the region?
As you know, Senator Rehman is quite an iconic figure in the field of environment and climate change. And she delivered big time when she was Minister for Climate Change, and she's been my colleague and a very close friend, because we were both journalists before we joined politics. So I think her two key elements were, one is the Global Security Initiative, which is about security being indivisible, and you cannot have one country's security at the expense of the other. You remember the views of countries like the Indian side, for example. They say that our security is threatened, and then they undermine our security, Pakistan's security. And the Global Security Initiative says, no, security of countries and regions are indivisible, and on the basis of protecting state sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity. So you cannot be a hegemon and say might is right, what Israel is doing in Palestine, what India is doing in occupied Kashmir, or what the superpowers tried to do in the past in Afghanistan and they failed, or in Vietnam. So in that context, I think this initiative is important because it talks of universality of security across the board and upholding principles of the United Nations Charter and international law. So there's a legal foundation and a moral foundation for security. Not might is right, as some people try. Secondly, about the greening of CPEC, she also mentioned the Karot project. Karot is about an hour and a half from Islamabad. It's 720 megawatts, and it's a power project, hydropower, CPEC. And there are 5 million people affected by it, and it's clean energy. So she gave it as a good example of green development under the CPEC.
All right.
And this is right next door in Islamabad.
Of course, and that could happen. I mean, I think the right environment needs to be put into place, and I'm sure that the Chinese are already cognizant of how Pakistan is moving forward in that direction also. I'd like to also give a little crux of what the other politicians said and ask your point of view on that. China's leadership ushering in technological advancement, human development and labor productivity. China's focus on security and development, and CPEC, a beacon of hope for Pakistan, symbolizing the transformative impact of our strong bilateral relations. Let's begin with these 3 points.
Now, it's very interesting. Now, you're talking of one speech was made by the PPP leader, another from the Pakistan Muslim League and Senator Sadiya Khakan Abbasi, and she talked of this interplay with security and development. Yes. That how China has also brought out, it's not about indivisible security, it's also about shared development. So they are sharing the fruits of their development with the countries in their neighborhood and as part of the Belt and Road Initiative globally as well. Because the Belt and Road Initiative, of which, as you mentioned rightly, CPEC is the flagship and the pivot, that is probably the most important developmental and diplomatic initiative of the 21st century. And we also discussed that recently the Communist Party of China held its third plenum under President Xi Jinping of the Communist Party, and that has a plenum which important party meeting which set the basis for reform and modernization. And they set clear markers that this is what we will achieve in 2029, which is the anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, 80th anniversary, then 2035, and then 2049, which is the 100 years of the founding of the People's Republic of China. So they set forward the path. And I mentioned also that the benefits of China's reforms, and I gave you the figures also, and that is the pattern that the Communist Party of China, which is 100 million strong, the largest political party in the world, one of the oldest political parties of Asia, and a party which has been a long-serving party. The reason for its success is because it has been serving the people and it has changed the lives of the people of China, lifting 800 million people out of poverty. And when Senator Shibli Fraz of the PTI, who's the leader of the opposition in the Senate, said it's a beacon of hope. So it's an important expression because the people feel that CPEC is a guarantor for a better tomorrow for the people of Pakistan. And in fact, CPEC now, I would say, is also a factor for national unity in a federation because it brings the provinces together also in the quest to build a better tomorrow through peace and prosperity.
China's focus on security and development, do you feel that could be an example to follow by other countries in the region?
Absolutely. Because China is one country which is not a hegemonic power. It has risen. It is the only country which has risen peacefully, without conquest, without colonization, without aggression, without invasion, without occupation. So you see, you have India which tries to occupy, Israel which tries to occupy, others which try to launch aggression. And China has been at peace for the last 40 years. So the focus is on that. So that is, I think, one very important lesson, that if you have to develop, as the Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the great leader, said, what is our foreign policy going to be? He said 75 years ago, peace within and peace without. So that is the essence of that. Focus on development. And when we say we want to have geoeconomics, CPEC is the platform for geoeconomics, because we are bringing people together. Pakistan as the hub of regional connectivity, South Asia, Central Asia, Iran, Afghanistan, and ports, pipelines, roads, railways, and these are energy economy. So this is what the future is all about. So if the future is right, beckons us, it's right there.
I totally agree with you on that, and I think the SCO is also very important forum for all of that.
And we're going to have, inshallah, a summit of the SCO in Islamabad, the middle of October. And the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a very key element. And we have also applied, by the way, for BRICS, which is now expanding to, now they have, Iran is part of BRICS, Saudi Arabia is part of BRICS, UAE is part of BRICS, and so is Egypt and Ethiopia. And in fact, next month, inshallah, I'll be going to Moscow for the BRICS Forum. I've been specially invited, the first Pakistani to attend the BRICS Forum.
Wonderful.
So I think that it's this is all about regional connectivity.
I understand it.
And the regional connectivity is the key to progress, because countries don't progress alone. Regions progress. And I wish this lesson was understood by our Indian friends, because they try to go it alone with a bully on the block mentality, and that's why they falter, whether they faltered in Maldives and now recently in Bangladesh.
What can I say? I think saner mentality needs to prevail within our neighbors. Let's talk about Islamabad's unwavering support for the One China policy and respect for China's unity, territorial integrity and sovereignty. How has that played out as far as the stability and the strengthening of Pak-China relations is concerned?
This point was made by Dr. Shazra Mansabali, who is a very highly educated member of parliament from the PMLN in the National Assembly, and I believe she's also the parliamentary secretary for foreign affairs. And she said that our commitment to One China policy is there because some countries, including India, by the way, are now talking to Taiwan and trying to undermine the One China policy principle, because Taiwan is a part of China. We on our part are very clear that we stick to our principles, we stick to our commitment, and this is under the UN Charter and international law, that the One China policy is paramount. And we feel also that China is one country which is very consistent, because they also supported us on Kashmir, by the way. At the United Nations, at other different fora also. And in fact, China stood with us like a rock on all. I call it the China provides air cover to Pakistan. I said, and they said, what do you mean by that? I said, it means that in the international fora, like the United Nations Security Council, G20, FATF, Nuclear Suppliers Group, where Pakistan is not a member, China is our voice. China defends us. China protects us. China speaks for Pakistan. And that's a very important element, that in this relationship, Pakistan too stands by China solidly on all its core interests. It's not just Taiwan, Tibet, Xinjiang, Hong Kong, South China Sea, and of course Taiwan.
Of course, and that is true. And I think that is one of the hallmarks that binds both countries together. Also, not only the mutual respect, but also understanding each other's perspective on important issues. Pakistan, another comment that was made was Pakistan learning a great deal from China's experience, especially in areas like economic development, infrastructure and governance. We have already, I think, emulated some of that under the CPEC, and will continue to do that now that the second phase has begun. But what needs to be done further to learn from China's experience?
Chinese wisdom is amazing. I've been to China in the last 50 years over 100 times. And I'll just state two aspects of their very great wisdom and culture. One is the Chinese axiom, seek truth from facts. So, you know, it's not a preconceived notion. It's not an ideological perspective. It's based on the facts. And facts mean that you have a policy which delivers and the results are positive for the people. Yes. And it's people-centric development.
True.
And secondly, the other principle they use, and which is very common, and it was used by Deng Xiaoping, the great reformer. And it's an old saying, crossing the river, stepping on the stones. Crossing the river, stepping on
the stones.
So you get the feel on the ground. So don't make airy-fairy policies. Like if you make a policy, say in Islamabad, about a rural village in Punjab or Balochistan, that won't work. You have to feel the situation on the ground and learn from that experience in a very practical, in a very empirical sense. So when you cross the river feeding the stones, so that's a very old traditional saying, you know. That means that you have the pulse of the people in your hands.
But coming back to political consensus, the reason for which you held this moot and invited people from all over,
See, we wanted to send a message that there are, of course, people want to undermine CPEC. People want to demonize CPEC. People want to have a cleavage in Pakistan-China relations.
Understood.
There are forces, unfortunately, international forces, they are working on that. That no, despite anything, despite impediments, we are unwavering in our commitment to take CPEC forward. And this was stated very strongly from our friends in the Balochistan province also. And this came in the aftermath of the recent acts of terrorism. So the message was loud and clear.
all
The
right.
people are united in Pakistan. The political parties are committed. And no matter what the obstacles, they'll be surmounted to take it forward. Because this is in our interests. This is in the interest of China also.
We had a reaction from the Chinese spokesperson when, of course, these dastardly incidents happened in Balochistan, and there was a Chinese firm commitment to stand by Pakistan in this hour as well. How do you see maybe a counter-terrorism strategy, a joint strategy to be evolved between both the countries to thwart all such elements in the future? Do you think that's a good possibility?
I think that's a very important point. And you remember that when these incidents took place, the Chinese army chief was here. So there was discussion with his counterparts in the military also. So I think a joint counter-terror strategy put together both by China and Pakistan is the need of the hour. Because the threat is common. And since we are facing a common threat, the source of the threat is the same. So we have to close ranks and cooperate. It should be institutional cooperation, intelligence cooperation, training, exchanges of information, because the targets of the terrorists are Pakistan and China.
Exactly, because nobody wants to see Pakistan develop, and nobody wants to see the China-Pakistan economic corridor develop because of their vested interests.
Those inimical forces who are there. So the best way to counter is do it collectively. A common threat, a common challenge, and collectively the counter-terrorism strategy. Because frankly, the strategies we adopted in the past have not worked. So it's the need of the hour to have that kind of approach, in my view.
Moving forward, what needs to be done in your point of view, now that this political consensus has been reached, and this is also something that the government has been talking about since quite some time, but now that this is done, we've seen a visual example of that happening yesterday. What now? What should we look forward to?
I think that this is, I think the government of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan should be very happy at the developments yesterday, because this is now a force multiplier. They have the backing of the entire political spectrum to take CPEC forward. 2-3 things. Number one window operation. Cut the red tape. There's too much red tape for Chinese investors. When they come, they have to run around from different government offices. One window operation. Secondly, foolproof security. Thirdly, a joint cooperative approach on perception management, that media management, because there are serious propaganda warfare, information warfare against CPEC.
Fifth generation.
Yes, and that has to be countered in a very organized, systematic, sustained manner. And finally, the point that you also made, a counter-terrorism strategy, jointly conceived, jointly planned, and jointly executed by Pakistan and China. That is the need of the hour. So, in the last 5 years, there have been 6 incidents against Chinese projects and personnel. 17 Chinese killed, 13 Pakistanis killed. This is unacceptable. And we cannot allow that to recur. So, never again can we tolerate that, because that will not just deter Chinese investors from coming to Pakistan, it will be deterrence against Arab investors, Muslim investors, Western investors. Because if you don't have an environment of peace, security and stability, then you can't take it forward. So I would think these are the elementary steps, and this should be taken forward, and these are all doable. Because this is a man-made problem. We know the source of terrorism.
Of course.
We know who is behind it. So let's counter it, and let's prove to the world that yes, we can do it.
With an iron fist.
Yes, and we have the capacity to do it, and we have the will to do it.
The 5 corridors that are being talked about in the upgraded version of the CPEC, which of these 5 corridors do you feel is going to be paramount for Pakistan's economic development?
Knowledge corridor. China is now the #1 country in terms of knowledge in science and technology. Please read The Economist, 15th of June. The cover story was China, the scientific superpower. And what did the story say? Now this is The Economist, published in London. They say that the old science order dominated by Japan, USA, Europe and UK is gone. And out of 10 top educational institutions in science and technology, 6 are in China. The #1 is not Harvard or MIT or Cambridge. It's Tsinghua University in Beijing, where President Xi Jinping studied. And they say out of 40% of papers on artificial intelligence, out of 100, 40% are from China. 15% from USA, 10% from UK and Europe. So China is leading. Learn from China. And we have 28,000 Pakistani students studying in China, 8,000 doing their doctorate in China. So we have a great opportunity. China is now the leader in innovation, in science, in technology. And I was reading a study recently done by Harvard University, Professor Graham Allison. They say the great tech rivalry, China versus the United States. It's 52 pages. You can find it on the internet.
All right.
And they say that China is overtaking the United States in high tech engineering, science, technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, cloud computing, 5G.
All right.
STEM, STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So the whole world is seeing China as the leader in that, and we are next door and we are the best friends. So we should benefit from that knowledge corridor.
When you talk
that is the key, because without education, without knowledge, without advanced science and technology, no country can progress.
Agreed and totally understood that, and development, of course. When you talk of knowledge corridor, I mean, that brings me to the very important perspective of people-to-people contact. Until we don't understand each other's perspective on a civilian level, not on a, we cannot strengthen our not only resolve but also this friendship. Do you feel that both the countries are working in the right direction when it comes to the people-to-people contact? If not, what needs to be done?
Now that is why I established the PakistanChina Institute. You got it right. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. 16 years ago, before CPEC, and I've been going to China very regularly, I said that there was a little gap, a little lacuna, if you will. We have very solid government-to-government ties, very solid military-to-military ties, very substantive state-to-state ties, but people-to-people interaction is key. I went to China as a student, it was people-to-people. I was not from the government, I was a teenager studying about China or listening to Radio Peking and so forth. So this is extremely important. Language training, interaction among youth, exchanges, academic exercises. So culture, art, your late father played a very big role in that, Khalid Said Bhatt Sahab. And I remember when Chinese cultural delegations used to come, he used to host. I was a young man those days. So, these are important elements. So, we have to understand the role of art and culture and people-to-people context.
Soft power.
Because that is the foundation. And this is a very abiding source of that relationship. It's a solid basis for that.
I agree. The joint consultative mechanism of political parties on CPEC and Pakistan-China Political Parties Forum, how important are forums such as these as well?
Very important. As you know, I was there on 21st of June. The joint consultative mechanism on CPEC was started. In fact, I was one of the architects of that.
I know that.
But the first meeting was held in March 2018. And it was a very important thing. And in fact, myself, I was there, and Senator Rehman was there also, by the way. And we had gone there especially to Beijing. Then we had another mechanism. And two of these joint consultative mechanism on CPEC were hosted by my PakistanChina Institute.
Oh, all right.
During the COVID, because in COVID we could not meet, but we could meet online. And now the recent one was held on 21st June 2024 in Islamabad, and Mr. Liu Jianchao, the Minister for International Development of the Communist Party of China, he was in Islamabad for that. And we had all the political parties together. So this is also a very institutional framework to bring political parties together.
Last question.
And that was, of course, at the government level, but we have done it at the non-governmental level.
And since quite a long time.
So, yes.
Finally, at this very moot, on the 21st of June, you have proposed the establishment of a rapid response information system to counter fake news aimed at damaging CPEC and Pak-China relations.
That was my proposal.
Yes, that's why I'm talking to you.
Thank you so much.
But when you talk of this proposal, what do you want to add in this proposal? What do you want this proposal to be when it is implemented?
This should be implemented, that there should be a mechanism from China and Pakistan, people from the government, think tanks, and also media, that whenever there is fake news, disinformation, misinformation, there should be a mechanism that we should be able to respond, as the Americans say, in a jiffy. Not that we have a handout or we type it out, because this is the world of social media, digital media. Tuck, tuck, tuck.
And such a lot of disinformation.
Yes, and suddenly you say, oh, is this true? Before people start, and then it misinforms people. And you get wrong information on that. So I think that if we have this rapid response information system, and which I offered that we can establish that, because it's a battle of ideas, it's a battle of narratives. I remember when I was information minister, and I was the chief spokesman of Pakistan when Pakistan went nuclear in 1998. Mr. Nawaz Sharif was the prime minister, I was the information minister. I was in a BBC program live, like this program.
Okay.
And suddenly, with an Indian general in London, suddenly said, oh, you Pakistanis, you have the Islamic bomb. I said, General, I never realized that bombs also have religions, because by that reckoning, you should have the vegetarian bomb.
Oh, all right.
So you see, I gave that response. So this shows that how the Pakistan's nuclear program, which is in response to India, was demonized by giving it an Islamic label. Nobody calls the Israeli bomb Jewish bomb, or the French bomb a Catholic bomb, or the Indian bomb a Hindu bomb. Or a North Korean bomb as a communist bomb, but why the Islamic bomb?
Agreed.
So, so that's why I said that maybe yours is a vegetarian bomb. So it's important to respond to this, because there are attempts to demonize.
Exactly, and that these efforts continue on the social media, because if you just open Twitter and all other social media platforms, there are a lot of things
and
that are
there are
happening.
double standards, because India is not criticized for human rights violations. Pakistan, a small incident takes place, suddenly we are in the dock. Oh, you've done this. But those people are committing genocide, whether it's Israel or India, and they get a free pass, sadly.
And that is where the
So that's why then there are double standards, and their countries are targeted on the basis of their certain interests, and on the basis, sometimes sadly, also on religion.
And that is so true. And speaking of religion and speaking of atrocities and genocide, my second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Palestine and what has been going on since the last 328 days. Today is the 328th day of this Israel-Palestine conflict. And of course, this is the conflict that shows no sign of abating as we speak. A lot of talk about ceasefire agreements and whatnot, but nothing concrete as of now. And to add to the misery of the Palestinians, not only is Gaza under fire, but also now the West Bank. At least 18 people have been killed since Israel escalated its assault on the occupied West Bank. On Wednesday, 22 have been wounded, 20 have been arrested. US issues new sanctions against Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. United Nations Antonio Guterres calls on Israel to immediately end its operation in the occupied West Bank. And of course, this goes on. But what we have always seen in the past as well, whether it be the United Nations Security Council resolution, whether it be all the other efforts that are being made by the important organizations, even the ICC, ICJ who have intervened, what happened? Nothing happened. Israel continues unabated with its barbarity, with its brutality, and continues to flout all and every single law that exists as far as human rights is concerned. I will continue my discussion with Mushahid Hussain Sayyid Saab on this very topic as well, and we'll also have a journalist from Palestine talking to us as soon as he gets on board, because there are some issues from Palestine and you know exactly what the issues are under these circumstances. So we'll begin with Mushahid Hussain Sayyid Saab. Hundreds of Israeli soldiers, Mushahid Hussain Sayyid Saab, are conducting a major assault in the occupied West Bank in Jenin, Tul Karem and the Farah refugee camp near Tubas. Israel has thus launched its largest military assault in this region in decades, targeting 4 cities at one time, killing 18 Palestinians, and I've just quoted the figures of those injured and those who have been affected. The scale of this current attack raises a lot of questions about its timing, about its motives. Why now? What are the motives behind this deadly attack in your point of view? Somebody who understands the whole situation of Palestine and who's seen it over the last decades.
So you look at the larger picture. The larger picture has 2-3 ingredients. Israel has lost this war in Gaza. In fact, it's not a war, it's genocide. Morally, legally, politically, diplomatically, and even now the Americans are saying, I was seeing a report by CNN, it was on 8th of August, that Hamas cannot be militarily defeated, neither can Hezbollah, despite their youth. And now there's pressure for a ceasefire, because the American presidential elections are gearing up also, and they are, the Democrats need a ceasefire because otherwise they will lose a lot of the votes there, especially the Muslim votes.
Yes.
So in that context, Netanyahu, the arch war criminal, knows the day there is a ceasefire, that's the political death knell of Netanyahu. He's gone.
But why is that? Why is he so afraid of this ceasefire? Won't it, also put him on a pedestal with the vis-a-vis the Israelis?
No, because he has gone too far, and the cost to Israel is very heavy, because people are now fleeing Tel Aviv. It was supposed to be an island of stability and security in a sea of instability and volatility. But now rockets, drones, missiles have fallen on Tel Aviv. They've crossed the Iron Dome also. So a lot of the people who felt that Israel would be their sanctuary and living there, they are now feeling insecure.
True.
So they are leaving the country. And he feels that to solidify his extremist base, he wants to broaden the war and involve the West Bank also. So to say that there's no Palestinian issue. You remember before 7th of October, which was the Al-Aqsa storm launched on 7th of October, 22nd of October, Netanyahu went to the United Nations General Assembly, and you would have seen those figures. He said the new Middle East. He brought a map of what he called the new Middle East. 22nd September, there was no reference to Palestinians or to Palestine. So he wanted to say that Palestine issue is resolved. And he said there was a long queue of countries trying to recognize Israel. So this was the perspective. But the Al-Aqsa storm, 7th of October, has reshaped the Middle East. It's changed and all bets are off. So I think that we are heading into very murky and dangerous waters. And you already had the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh.
Of course.
Then you have had the Hezbollah attacking also, because their leader, Fuad Shukr, was also killed, assassinated. Then the Houthis also sending their missiles. So, this whole area is now becoming a powder keg. And this is what he would like, that sustain this thing, create fear among the people of Israel that, oh, the issue is the Palestinians and we have to demolish that resistance, which you cannot.
No, there's a very interesting point here, and that concerns Iran. There is a deliberate attempt by Israel to somehow involve Iran in this directly and then involve US in this whole conflict and put both at loggerheads, that is the US and Iran. Will Israel succeed?
I don't think so, no. You see, what happens is that Iran is already being demonized. So it's already seen in the enemies list, you know, like the 4 they say. I was reading the American annual threat assessment issued by the American intelligence community. It's 16 intelligence organizations. This was issued in March 2024. 4 countries are listed, not Pakistan, but China, Iran, North Korea and Russia. Iran, they would like that it should also be put in that list. But if you remember when Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Damascus, the Americans made it clear to Israel for the first time that if they go for a big war with Iran, America will not support them. Because America is also scared. There are 30,000 American soldiers and sailors in the Middle East. They have their aircraft carriers, USS Eisenhower,
Yes.
USS Ford. They have that submarine, USS Georgia. They're all there. They can't afford that. And if missiles or drones or bombs start hitting them from Iran or its proxies in the region, it will be totally devastating. So they understand that the war against Iran could lead to a wider conflagration. And this would be an unwinnable war without end.
What I'd like to understand is, this is the last question concerning this. We are on the end of our show. The role of the United Nations has really been undermined in these last few months. There has been one United Nations Security Council resolution that was approved, but the US abstained from it, but then called it non-maintainable. Previous United Nations Security Council resolutions have not passed because of vetoes. Doesn't it put the United Nations and its agencies in the red as well because of how the whole Palestinian issue has been dealt with?
I think it's a matter of shame that the resolution calling for ceasefire in Gaza was vetoed by the United States of America. I think it's never happened in history that a resolution that calls for an end to genocide, and this is the first live televised genocide in history, that is being vetoed. So it does put to shame. The United Nations is a collection of countries, and some countries have this veto power, including the United States, and they have vetoed it, the calls for peace, which means they have given a green light for the genocide. So I think it's a matter of shame, and it shows also double standards that people who talk of humanity and human rights, when it comes to the actual brass tacks, for them, the lives of Westerners are perhaps more sacred than the lives of Muslims. Sadly.
Thank you very much, Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyid Sahab, Chairman PakistanChina Institute, to have joined us, to have stayed with us throughout the show, to have talked about 2 very, very important topics for Pakistan. Peace in Pakistan, Pakistan-China relations, China-Pakistan economic corridor, the political consensus that is the need of the hour that got underway because of your efforts, to put it that way, and of course the second is Palestine and what is happening there and what are the reasons behind it.
And now the need of the hour is to take this political consensus on CPEC forward on other areas, including domestic governance and domestic politics.
Inshallah.
And that's the only way Pakistan can move forward, inshallah.
Inshallah. And you're here, and I think your efforts will bear fruit, and I'm sure you'll continue to work in that arena. Let's come to our last 2 stories very quickly before I wind up this show. Sweden has charged 2 men over the 2023 Quran burnings. 2 men in Sweden are now going to on trial after burning the Quran several times during the protests last year, which had sparked widespread outrage in Muslim countries. And these 2 people have committed offences of agitation against an ethnic or national group 4 separate times. This has been said by the Swedish prosecutors of all of that. The burnings have had prompted, as we all know, large protests in many countries. Finally, the Greek port has grappled with the flood of dead fish. Authorities in central Greece are racing to deal with this inundation of tons of dead fish at a popular port that locals say could threaten their livelihoods. Around 20,000 hectares of plains in Thessaly were flooded and various freshwater fish were carried by rivers in the sea. Since then, the lake waters have receded drastically, forcing the freshwater fish towards the Volos port that empties into the Pragmatic Gulf and the Aegean Sea, where they cannot survive, and that is the reason for this happening. Let's hope better times come to Greece as well and to their ports. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with stories and segments that pertain to you, us and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.